Welcome back, guys.
Yes.
We're here in Saigon along the riverfront.
Oh yeah, really cool, really nice, especially with the breeze and the little fan
Yeah.
and little coffee, little robusta. And I don't know if you guys know, but this is the natural. This is the strongest naturally occurring coffee in the world that they grow here. This robusta, and it's yeah, it gives you a little bit of a boost, to say the least.
Yeah, it's exactly what we need.
Yeah. Yeah, especially at those dips this week, man, in the crypto market, man. We had a couple big dips. One, I can't remember what that was all about. The first one last week, you remember the liquidations were just like a 5 or 7% dip, just boom in the middle of the week, out of nowhere. And I think Mario called that pretty good. He said, we're going to get to the halving, we're going to have a dump. And yeah, we haven't got to the halving. I think we got about 3 days left. But we've had 2 big dumps.
Usually we get, like what I've seen in the past, with other halvings is that there's generally like quite a big correction going into the halving, or like just before or just afterwards. The timing of the previous halving ended up being just around, March 2020, which was when we had the big market crash because of
COVID. Yeah, that was a black swan event. That wasn't expected though.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
But we've seen generally we see good 40 to 50% dips going into the halving, and then after that we get a little bit of sideways price action, and then generally it takes it generally takes about six to 9 months before Bitcoin actually hits its previous all-time high and then goes into price discovery again. But like this time we've seen Bitcoin already go into this phase, so
And then we had 2 things that happened this past week. One, there was a lot of volatility on it was like Tuesday or Wednesday, and then of course Saturday night, Sunday our time, of course, with the Iran launching an attack on Israel, that kind of spooked the markets, and everybody was like, oh well, we're going to war. So that shook all of the markets, crypto, stocks across the board, and that actually caused about 3 or 4 or 5% dump as well across the board, most cryptos. But what's really, we've been having a lot of whiplash back and forth this past week, because we've got just this morning, Hong Kong time, we have the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs approved. So that's going to, early estimates were it's going to be could spur an extra $25 billion of investments. But I was reading some reports earlier today that a lot of the mainland Chinese are not going to be able to invest. So I guess it's going to be restricted to foreign investors and people that are in Hong Kong only. It's kind of weird how they have their jurisdiction still kind of
segregated.
Yeah, it's still, even though China's still technically is taken over from the British control a couple years back, but it's still, they still have kind of a fragmented kind of governance system there, I guess. I
think though, I mean, this is me speculating, knowing nothing about the current situation, but I think that there's probably, the people that have money in China, they probably have ways to get money into Hong Kong if they want to invest in this.
No doubt, man. The rich always have a way around the system, man.
Yeah.
They can game the system better than anybody.
So I think it's going to be interesting because, I sent you some, this post about what's actually happening with the Evergrande situation in With
Right.
And, people are likening this to being 2 to 3 times larger than what happened during the global financial crisis in 2008, with the subprime mortgage crisis, but very regionally specific to China. And we talked about this previously. I spoken to a guy who's in China, working in crypto, and he was saying that their entire market is just completely, it's in a downward spiral now as a result of this. And so having access to crypto in some way is probably one of their own main mechanisms of being able to sort of, hedge that risk and decentralize away from, what's actually happening economically in China. And so I think there's a pathway for, real strong capital inflows coming in through this Hong Kong ETF that's been approved.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the mainland China. The Chinese can funnel their money somehow out offshore. But they've done it for years. They've done it with matter of fact, they've gotten a lot of the real estate market in some of the West Coast areas. I mean, I think was Portland, some of the West Coast cities. They've had a lot of Chinese basically get their money out of the country some kind of way to invest in real estate. They actually messed up the market pretty much for a lot of people and made it put it out of reach for a lot of people anyway. A lot of the millionaires from China, buying up, speculating in real estate. So
well, same thing happened in Australia.
Really?
I think the Australian property market is probably one of the most insane growths in terms of property, to the point that it's become a real cultural thing where people just people in my generation typically tend to think if I want to make money or if I want to have assets, the only thing I can think of to do is to buy property. And it's so ingrained culturally because that's how everyone in my parents' generation made wealth in Australia is by owning property, because buying property back in the 60s and 70s, you'd buy a house for $10,000 Australian dollars, and now those properties are worth $10,000, $20,000, and they're worth millions of dollars now in many parts of the country. And so what I think a lot of that growth was actually, to your point, exactly the same thing, where it's just Chinese coming in and buying real estate in Australia and owning a lot of property there. So they, like you said, they have ways of getting that money out.
It's the same in the U.S., especially if you living somewhere like the West Coast. I mean, I know, a lot of people don't realize it, but back in the 70s as well in the U.S., there were times where people could buy property in places like L.A., $50,000, $60,000, and it was easier back then to have a regular job and to pay your house note. Good luck in a lot of those same places on the West Coast, because a lot of those places, man, I was actually talking to one of my friends back in the U.S. and he's like, Terrence, he said, look, I'm standing in this place now in L.A. and I guess he was renting, but he's like, look, he said, you send me a picture of the house. He said, man, this is about $1.4 million house. It was just a regular 2-bedroom house. I mean, this place, in the Midwest, it would only probably be about $400,000 or $500,000 in a lot of areas. But LA area, good luck. 1.5 mil, and it was just, it probably had about maybe 12 to 1,500 square feet total, which in metrics, I gotta get used to the metric system over here in Asia, man. Probably in the metric system, maybe about 100 square meters size in size. So it really makes absolutely no sense. But that whole thing about owning real estate is kind of out of reach for the modern generation, so to speak, if you have an ordinary job. So I think a lot of people, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are actually turning to crypto, because what better way to generate wealth and to maintain your wealth, if you're priced out of a market, which right now, you've got we had the way, you got inflationary pressures driving the value of the dollar down. You've got all these things going on with the economy. You had big companies like BlackRock and a lot of the big financial institutions buying up properties sight unseen, in droves for the past 3 or 4 years. It just priced everybody out of the market. Hell, I was living in Reno. We were, I remember one of the statistics I seen last year was, the price had went up almost, I think it went up in 3 years, the price of a home went from $400,000 in Reno to over $650,000 in 3 years.
Wow.
So, these are all of the issues going on. And, heck, the average kid is Generation Z, Generation Y, whatever these generations they have us designated as. Their average job, good luck. You're not going to be able to get a house. And matter of fact, a lot of people were having a hard time even renting in Reno.
In Australia now, you can't. It's very difficult to rent.
Yeah.
London as well. I've seen queues for. I've seen videos of people queuing up for for rental properties.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm glad I'm out of the U.S. I mean, it's just there's other options in the world. I mean, a lot of people. I was looking at a article last week. A lot of people were like saying how the level of people that are looking at other options to go outside of America has increased dramatically. I think about 30% of the people have considered moving abroad. And I'm understanding a lot of it has to do with the economic situation of things, which is terrible.
It's an interesting thing. You look at the property market, right? And what we've been talking about with the property market just going crazy. Mm-hmm. And you look at there's always this thing of like last bull market, everyone was like, oh, this is the last cycle to make major gains. Like, after this, the market's just going to level out. There's not going to be any more opportunities. And now people are saying, well, this is the last cycle. And there's this narrative of like, oh, this is going to be the last cycle to make crazy multiples and make tons of money. But then if you think about it, the property market has been doing this for decades and decades. I mean, obviously, the crypto market is very different. It's a different asset class because there's much more liquidity than there is in property.
Right.
In terms of like your minimum buy size is significantly smaller, so it's very easy to own portions of a Bitcoin. You can buy $10 of Bitcoin, you can buy $100 of Bitcoin. You can't really buy a fraction of a house, and it's a much slower market.
What if they do the fractionalized?
Yes.
Fractionalized ownership.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, so I think there's like this concept that people talk about of like, oh, this is the last cycle to make it, and I just don't think that's true. I think
there's still another couple halvings until it stops.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the thing that's going to be interesting is I think that there's always going to be opportunity in markets to make money, and I think like once these big market cap tokens, big L1s and L2s and Bitcoin and things like that really start leveling out in price range, you're still going to have speculation in the small, mid-cap, and low-cap coins. And as long as the regulation isn't there to stop regular people from taking positions in these projects, you're still going to have that speculation. There's just going to be new vehicles because, like you said, by people in these younger generations, we've been priced out of the housing market. And so as a result, where are you going to speculate to make money? Because there's always going to be a desire to make money. Right?
Vietnam. That's why I'm here. But no, talking about the regulation, man, I was looking at some stuff that was really concerning to me because, this past month, there have been a number of legal things that have happened. Of course, the other day, Uniswap got a whale's notice, which is basically a letter of intent to be sued by the SEC in the U.S., which anybody that doesn't know Uniswap, they're a decentralized entity that allows people to swap tokens. It's not controlled by anything but software on the blockchain, and
fully decentralized.
Yes, decentralized, meaning that it's global. It's embedded in computers all over the world. It sits on the internet. So, but yeah, just another example of overreach by the SEC and grasping at straws to try to rein in, people having a little bit of freedom with their, with whatever they're putting their value into, but they actually there was another case out of Florida, which I shared with you earlier. I was just telling you and Mario about this. They're making it really hard for anybody to operate in the U.S. as it comes to crypto, and it's by design. The big banks want control. They mask everything as trying to protect people. This is how they frame it. Oh, we're trying to protect everybody. We're trying to protect you from this. No, they're trying to protect the financial powers that are, and it's really self-evident because they had no problems approving BlackRock's ETFs, and ARK Invest ETF, and Fidelity ETF, all the big financial players. They had no problem approving them with the Bitcoin ETF. But let an entity that has a decentralized platform that allows you and I to do something, to have transactions that's affecting our wealth, our value of what our work we put into the system, and let us be able to trade freely. They don't want that. They want to be able to see what we're doing. They want to be able to control what we're doing, and they use the guise of protecting us and protecting us from money laundering, protecting the system from money laundering, protecting everybody from terrorism. I have zero faith in the system anymore because, look at what they're doing in the world right now. Most of the people in the U.S. do not approve of this so-called war on Gaza. This is 75% of the people, last poll. If they're really protecting us from terrorism, how are they approving this? They keep sending bombs and they kill 40,000 people already. It makes no freaking sense. So I don't know what they're doing, what they claim they're doing. They claim they're protecting us. They're protecting the interests of the elite, the financial global elite system. That's it. That's all they're doing. And with the case out of Florida in particular, there was a guy that was. He was doing some OTC transactions. For those that are not under the understanding of what OTC is, over-the-counter transactions for Bitcoin. And he was doing this in Florida amongst people, and he was basically charging a 1% fee for them to be either on-ramped onto the Bitcoin system or off-ramped. And when I say that, meaning he would exchange the value of their dollars and give them Bitcoin in their personal wallets, or vice versa, for a 1% fee. And I guess over the period of about 6 years he did this, and they had, I guess the Department of Justice came after him and said he did about $5 million in transactions total, and they got him for unlicensed money transmitter, and they gave him a 57-month sentence. And after he gets out of federal prison, he's got 3 years of supervised release. So, but it's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like he's transacting within the framework of a decentralized digital system and giving people the value of that. And it's not really, how is that money? I don't understand how that's money. It's crypto. Crypto is not money. It is a value. It is in a sense
an asset. Yeah,
an asset class. It is a commodity, but it's not necessarily money. It's something that is a digitally transmitted asset. If I was to sell you coffee, how is that money? It's an asset. This is an asset. So I mean, it's the weird ways in which the legal system in America is operating, man. It's actually just going rogue and trying to stymie stuff. But like I said, it's not going to do anything but move everything to countries like Vietnam, Nigeria. Well, maybe not so Nigeria, because Nigeria's kind of cracking down on it too. But El Salvador, Brazil.
All these other developing countries.
Yeah, all these other developing, young, vibrant, forward-thinking, technology-savvy countries.
I mean, look at this. Like, to your point, the thing is like you look at regulation, right? And there's guys around regulation that's supposed to protect everyone.
Yeah.
FTX committed one of the biggest cases of fraud in the modern world. There was $8 billion of customer funds were stolen and given to Alameda to basically piss away and it was done illegally.
Yes.
FTX had, I looked at their website when all of this was going down. They had financial licenses to operate in every jurisdiction that they operated in. They had legal precedents to be able to operate in every single jurisdiction that they were operating within as a centralized exchange. And yet they committed one of the biggest cases of fraud. And a lot of people that were like, oh, we need more regulation in crypto, or saying that, crypto is a scam and all of these things when the FTX collapse happened, never looked into this to look at it and say, well, hang on a second. There is regulation in place. And FTX followed that regulation according to what was in
Like
place.
licensed and everything.
And yet they were still able to commit fraud. And this is the thing, is like, regulation does not mean that fraud cannot happen.
Exactly.
Regulation doesn't stop people from stealing money, because we have in other industries this happening all the time. You know, we have Theranos, we have all these other evidence of startups or other businesses that have committed large-scale fraud whilst complying to regulation in industries that are supposedly heavily regulated to protect consumers or to protect investors. And so when you think about this, you're like, well, what does this regulation do? It doesn't really help.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It protects the big guys, and that's about it. And to that point, it's like, they gave him, to me, I think they gave him a slap on the wrist. Yes, he did a $25 billion fraud. Hell, there was a lady last week that was here in Vietnam. She actually
44 billion.
She did, anywhere. I think some of the estimates was between 12 and 40 billion. She did a $40 billion fraud. She had a bank. She was she was borrowing money off of customers. I mean, she was doing all kinds of things, man. And they ended up giving her the death sentence. And I think, as many people as she's affected, I think that might be appropriate, because it wasn't on accident. She was doing this stuff blatantly. She's ruined countless people's lives, and she was riding around in nice cars. And actually one of the reports I seen, she was driving around, and she would have she had money flowing out of the car. I mean, just ridiculous. She's just greed, beyond greed.
The equivalent of what she stole was the equivalent of 3% of Vietnam's GDP. That's insane. That's an insane amount of money.
So 25 years for SBF, I think is a slap on the wrist. And this is what the financial institution, that's what the legal system in America allows people to get away with. How are you going to give the guy that is helping people transact off and on Bitcoin, give him like 57 months, and he's only did $5 million worth of transactions. But at the same time, you turn and give the guy that did a $25 billion fraud, he gets, only about 3 or 4 times it. That makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense.
It's the level of, he's affected people. I was telling you about my man in Singapore that was doing the tap to earn last week. And he actually had a lot of his money on FTX. He said he lost about 90% of his
I know people that have lost that much,
and it's like
hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've lost,
Yes, man. So, this guy has caused serious financial harm to people. But yet
let's not forget the fact that after he was after FTX collapsed, he also went around and did some media tour with all the big media companies in the US, like Wall Street Journal, all of them, and they were interviewing him, and people were clapping for him and shit. They were painting him as some kind of saint, even though he did
he was paying for positive publicity.
Yeah, I could not believe how much. It's clear how much influence he has when you look at what happened.
I think he should have got more time for that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That and the campaign finance thing, but they hushed that part of it real quick because they wanted to keep that campaign money.
Yeah.
Because he gave close to $500 million to all the politicians.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's insane what they got going on in America. I'm glad I'm out of there. It's just a madhouse right now.
You're absolutely right. Look, going back to talking about what was happening in China and this this Hong Kong ETF. One of the things that I've been looking into is Ruin protocol and these BRC20 protocols, BCR20 protocols that are launching, and there's a lot of interest around in that space in China, and I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that you have retail Chinese that are interested, and even some bigger players that are really interested in this stuff, because there is a lot of money floating around in this space, and there is this desire of getting some type of capital appreciation and making money, and it's a pretty interesting ecosystem that's kind of growing and coming up, and a lot of people are I think a lot of Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maxis are kind of shitting on ordinals and shitting on all of these side chains that exist. And to be fair, I do believe there is some merit in some of that that belief system, but the reality is that if there's a way for people to speculate and make money on this, people are going to do it. And So, there's a lot of speculation going on around in this, and like I said, there is some there is some parts that the BTC maxis have, right about this, but at the end of the day, people are going to speculate on this. I think it's still room to pump. I think there's lots of room there for this narrative to play out and to keep playing out over the long term. But it'll be interesting to see how it all goes.
Yeah, every bull cycle, you see something that's not normal to the crypto space that pumps out of the blue that are like, wow, people are interested in this,
Yeah.
Same with the NFT craze and
the last cycle.
And the meme craze. Actually, the meme craze is still continuing right now. It's just actually reinvigorated.
It's even more amplified now because of what happened in the last cycle. You have major project leads that are chains that are actually actively pumping meme coins, supporting them, supporting liquidity for them, promoting them, talking about them.
Yeah, I think I'm still like a long-term investor, so I look at stuff that's going to be happening, in the future. So, I don't really get onto these phases or these fads too much anymore. Because to me, it's a lot of work to do the investigation, to make sure that the coin is legitimate, make sure the liquidity is there, make sure it's evenly distributed. These are all the things that that you learn the hard way in crypto, that you have to investigate before you actually put something into a coin. But one of the things
not financial advice.
Yeah, not financial advice. But we have the disclaimer, of course, in the description and at the end of the videos. But the thing that I thought was something that came out interesting that they have that's coming out in 2025. I know it's a long ways out, but one of the guys that actually was part of the whole Facebook Libre thing, a couple of the guys broke off. One of them started Aptos, another one started Sui, and of course a couple months ago Sui started workshops over here in Vietnam, which I thought was pretty forward-thinking step of them after seeing how successful Solana has been in trying to build their community and get their crypto off the ground. And they actually have, it's been very successful in generating projects onto the chain. And that's one thing that you're going to see. When you see the chain get a lot of activity, it's going to go up in value. So I think what I saw here recently in the past week is that Sui, they've announced that they're going to have a handheld game console that's actually going to have, it's going to be allowing Web3 games on the console, which I thought was pretty cool. It's going to be a handheld console. It's supposed to be released next year. So if you're looking at something that might be a long-term play, that's going to have a chain, Sui would actually be a good chain to invest in long term anyway. I would think that might be a good long-term play.
It's got one of the things I noticed, Sui network is actually quite big in Asia.
Yeah.
It's quite big in a lot of the retail participation in Asia. I remember when I first met Mario, he was talking about it. He was just a lot of Vietnamese people are interested in this.
Yes.
It's you have Solana have done really well with penetrating the Asian market, and Clayton is another one.
Yeah.
They're Korean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Korean. Sui, what are the other big networks that are in Asia that's quite big?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good play. But yeah, it just depends on if the pricing. I think it was $500 for the handheld, but I guess it's going to depend on what those games are that's coming out, how they finagle it. Are they going to offer airdrops? Because I think one of the cool things that Solana did was that
with the Saga,
you bought the phone, you got the airdrop. And actually, they got another phone that's coming out.
I pre-ordered.
Okay.
Yeah, did you?
I didn't get it on that, but I should have. But yeah, so I thought that was pretty slick of them we're going to give everybody that bought this handheld phone, we're going to give them an airdrop, and they do the same thing for their second phone.
A lot of other projects piled into that, and they were we're going to airdrop to Saga holders, and it's a really powerful tool. And I remember. During the last bull market, when Avalanche really started to get a lot of adoption, the meme around Avalanche was the bridge. The bridge was so good And it was such a, out of all the other projects that existed, I think that was one of the reasons why I was able to get a lot of traction really early on, was because it was so seamless, it was so easy to use that bridge, it was so easy to get funds across. And it was a really well-built tool. And what had happened was, I remember during the peak later parts of that bull market, was that going into Avalanche Rush, which was their incentive scheme to promote protocols on Avalanche, a lot of projects were launching meme coins and launching tokens and airdropping them. And I remember like GB, Good Bridging, was one of them. And so it's like any wallet that you bridge, like you got airdrop tokens, like depending on how much you bridge across. And I remember like a lot of my friends, like we got like $1,000 worth of tokens per wallet. You know, like, yeah, 1K USD worth. And I remember that being like a real big catalyst of like bringing a lot of people over across and actually wanting to use these protocols, was like promoting usage and having protocols that were built on top of it that were just airdropping tokens. And I think Solana have taken that really well and have captured it really well with the Saga phones. And, you know, actually, anyone that bought a Saga phone just like really killed it. Like I faded that move so hard, because when the pre-orders for the Saga phone came out, I believe that was around the same time that FTX had fully collapsed.
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, I have one of my friends bought the Saga phone, pre-ordered, and I was like, dude, this is like, first of all, who's gonna buy? Why is anyone gonna buy a phone, crypto phone
that they don't have yet?
That they don't have yet. And also, I was like, as soon as FTX collapsed, like my mindset was like, well, they were one of the biggest investors in the Solana network, and it felt like they almost controlled it.
Right.
And after that, I was like, this is going to be a dead chain. It's going to be like Terra 2.0.
kind of a bad timing to try to.
But dude, those guys killed it, man. Like I think that airdrop, I don't know what it is now, but I remember like a few months ago, it ended up being like almost like $6,000 to $8,000 or something.
One of our mutual friends, she's on the Solana super team. She actually told me she had about $8,000 worth of tokens. I was like, wow, okay. So that was the come up, you know, really. I just off of what is it, $400 or $500 phone at the time. Yeah, so good effort to anyone that bought a Saga phone. Like you guys killed it. Yeah. So that's kind of what, you know, good metric or good thing to think ahead on is how much the strategically they are going to enable or to encourage participation on the chain. That's a good thing to actually gauge when considering what to put, you know, your investment in crypto. I remember like no financial advice. Yeah, I remember the very first the first ETH Vietnam that happened a couple of years ago. I went to that event and I remember listening to a speaker there, and what he was talking about was creating momentum in any blockchain that you create. And he was talking about kind of the network effects that you need to be able to create if you want to build a successful ecosystem. And so there's three different things that you need to think about with this. So one, you need developer network effects to happen. So you need people building shit on your chain, and you need to find a way that there's a lot of friction to get people to build on your chain, because first of all, there's like tons of different blockchains that exist. And secondly, a lot of the people that you want to transition over are already working in Web2, or they're already working in some other industry, and you kind of want to pull them over. And so, like, what you want to do is create communities where you have hackathons, you have these events, you have like the SUI one that you went to the other day, where they want to teach people how to build on the chain and create good tooling for them to make support. And then provide incentives and benefits for you to build on that chain, right? And I know you go to a bunch of these events, right? There's tons of them that are happening here in Asia, and in Vietnam, and in Saigon particularly. It's interesting to see the dynamics play out. Because I got in crypto when I was in the U.S., and I came here 2 years ago, and I really didn't understand a lot about how the interactions of these chains operate, how they generate communities, how they spur innovation and creativity, and you know, different apps and apps that you can use. I mean, but it's an interesting dynamic on how it works. But you know, it's way more active here. Oh yeah, compared to the U.S. They're just going to stymie stuff. It's like they're going after even going after Richard Hart. You know, I was actually looking at some of the legal stuff he filed last week. So it's crazy, man. They're stymieing everything that's innovative in the U.S. I mean, you know, with the whole thing with the Hex lawsuit against Richard Hart, he hasn't even operated inside the U.S. And but they're still going after him because I guess some people utilize his chain in the U.S. or utilize his software. But yeah, but that's why I think the U.S. is done as far as innovation on blockchain is concerned. I mean, they'll allow people or entities like BlackRock to do it, but the average ordinary Joe, good luck.
Yeah, I think the retail participation in this market, in this cycle, is going to be in Asia.
I
think it's going to be driven in Asia, South America, and Africa. I think they're going to be the key things, and I think there's probably a lot more retail money floating around in Asia between those 3 different regions.
Oh yeah.
And so it's super interesting. It's like I was talking to some of my friends. I have friends in crypto. Like most of my online friends I have in crypto are like in the Western part of the world. And so for them, they don't really know what's happening in Asia. They don't really see what's going on because we're kind of like, and previously before I moved here, I was isolated from this part of the market, even though I was living in Australia.
Yeah. You came here at about the same time. 2 years ago. Yeah.
And it was interesting, like, I was telling them, I was like, hey, there's like 3 to 4 of these events and workshops happening like every week at least. And they were like, dude, there's like none of this happening in the UK. Like,
that's not to mention the little parties. I mean, because I'm in a lot of different communities on Telegram, and they give people incentives to have the university kids to have the parties, and they have different events. Not only beside the workshops and the hackathons and the game-a-thons, but they'll have a pizza party, to get everybody together to talk about crypto. So yeah, man, just the innovation is just off the charts here. But we're going to be bringing you guys a lot more news and events and insight onto that. We have another interview later this week with a guy from. He's actually been here, but he's from Korea. So yeah, we just got a lot of activity going on. But yeah, I think with that, we probably just want to wrap it up.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Make sure you guys subscribe. I see we've got a lot of people that watch our videos, but yeah, make sure you guys subscribe, support, share. So we're trying to get the word out about crypto, Web3. I mean, this is where the freedom is. This is where the future is. This is where, if you're smart, this is where you would want to put your value in, so that the financial institutions and powers that be don't take a lot of your wealth. And this is what I was going to say.
No, I was going to say, like, yeah, if there's anything as well, like, that you guys want to see about the Vietnam crypto ecosystem, or if you're a project working in this space and you want us to highlight you, like, we're starting to do our next phase of content where we're going to be interviewing founders, we're going to interview people in the projects, people in the ecosystem, to bring some more light into what's kind of going on here and sharing that with the rest of the world. So, if you want to know about any of these things, or if you're someone that, you want to come on a channel, drop us a comment, reach us on our socials. We'll post all that stuff later, and yeah.
It's all in the description.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, keep a coffee in crypto. Have a good day.
See you later, guys.